Hi Year 6, it's Mrs Withers here with chapter 20 of Orphans of the Tide. And this chapter is called The Boy Who Got Lost at Sea. "That's you," said Anna, looking at Seth. "It can't be," said Seth distantly. "But he could move the water, and he came out of the sea creature, and he said the exact same thing that you said the day we found you. Where are my brothers and sisters?" Anna took a deep breath, frantically rereading. "He's exactly like you. Well, except for this remarkably quick-witted part." Ellie blinked, reading the words again and again. Finn's laughter still rang from the rafters. It had changed from a childish giggle to a harsh, hacking laugh. It does seem to be describing you," Ellie admitted. There was another agonised cry from deep below. Seth and Anna tensed, looking to the door. "You heard that too?" said Ellie, and they both nodded. Whatever they're doing to that poor man, they might not be doing it for much longer. We should go while they're distracted." Ellie put Hester Mayer's original diary and his manuscript into a waterproof bag and made a dried seal inside. As they crept from the chamber, Ellie spared a final glance for the map on the wall and the mysterious unlabelled island close to the floorboards before it was swallowed by the darkness. They scurried along the corridor as quickly as they dared, down the staircase and through the trapdoor. They huddled together at the top of the stairs. Seth looked down at the sea, closing his eyes. It took him longer this time. Ellie guessed he was distracted by what he'd seen in the manuscript. At last the waters fell away, and Ellie and Anna carried Seth down the steps. Ellie saw the intense concentration on his face, his brow furrowing, as if he were haunted by a nightmare. Then his eyes opened. I can't hold it," he panted. They were right at the bottom of the stairs, on the slimy flagstones. Around them the dark waters rippled, held back only by Seth's power. Ellie felt a jolt of panic. If the water crashed down on them, how would it dash them against the side of the building, or sweep them out to sea? "You can, Seth," she urged him. Seth gave a low growl and closed his eyes again. The wall of water trembled. Around Ellie's ankles the sea rose, soaking her trousers. And then it started to sink. Ellie and Anna sighed in relief and carried Seth up the steps. With a hiss of released breath, Seth relaxed and the wall of water collapsed, smashing against the buildings below them. Seth was shivering, his skin so icy that they had to wait a few moments, warming his hands on the extinguished lamp. They crept along a cobbled path by the waterfront towards an alley that would take them up to the Orphanage Street. The wind bit at Ellie's scalp, parting her hair like an icy knife. On their left rose the Warrens, the cracked husks of 300 buildings, their rooftops gone and their insides scooped out by fire. To their right, sitting just offshore, was a tall, moonlit castle, with many pointed towers and a squat circular amphitheatre nestled at its side. It was called Celestina's Hope, after the first saint, and could only be reached at low tide, by way of a thin line of rooftops that poked above the sea, like a row of huge stepping stones. All of a sudden, Seth stopped. "It can't have been me. In the shark, I mean. Can it?" He looked at Ellie, and she thought there was something almost pleading in his eyes. Ellie swallowed, staring at her feet. She was finding it hard to think. She pushed her hands deep into her pockets, right down to the seams, and her fingertips brushed something small and round and hard. She took out the pearl and rolled it in her palm. It jogged something in her memory. Strange how secretive the pearl was, tucked inside its oyster shell. "I don't think you were swallowed by that whale," Ellie said. "I've looked at drawings of whales' throats. They're actually quite small, There's no way you could swallow a person. And even if they could, if you were inside for longer than a few minutes, you would have died of suffocation. But I was inside one, said Seth. He marched ahead, his energy seemingly returning. Ellie hurried after, glancing nervously around. The path had led them through a collection of crumbled statues from before the drowning. It was a forest of stone, 100 men and women and animals, cavorting motionlessly in the dark. They cast odd, jagged shadows, and Ellie had the strange feeling that they might start moving at any moment. Seth sat down, leaning against one of the statues, looking out over the sea and the line of rooftops that led to Celestina's Hope. I was inside one, he said again. I don't think we should hang around here, said Anna, eyeing the stone animals all around them. Something tugged again at Ellie's memory. The mural, she said. Anna frowned. What mural? Seth and I saw it in the sewers when we were coming back from the oystery. It was of this dead wolf, only there was a woman climbing out of it. Seth looked up at her. His eyes narrowed. Who was she? Said Anna. Ellie took a deep breath. I don't know, but she had a halo around her head. That usually means someone is a saint. But this mural was old, from before the drowning, before there were saints. Maybe halos meant something different then. Like what? Asked Seth. Well, nowadays people believe the saints protect us, said Ellie. But back then, people thought it was the gods. What if that's what a halo used to mean? But why would a god be coming out of a dead animal? Said Anna. Ellie bit her lip. Isn't that sort of what the enemy does? It comes out of the vessel. Maybe the other gods had vessels too, only maybe they waited until the vessel was going to die anyway, instead of killing them. Remember how the wolf in the mural looked really old, Seth? They were probably much nicer, those gods. Why else would the enemy have drowned them? Seth stood up, watching Ellie warily. What are you saying? I'm saying Anna's right. It is you in that story. The shark had sea blue eyes too, just like the whale you came out of. But that happened hundreds of years ago, said Seth. I'm not hundreds of years old. Your body isn't, Ellie said, looking him up and down. But what if part of you is? Seth turned away. So, you mean... I mean, the whale I pulled you out of was a vessel, which means that you're a... Well, Ellie couldn't bring herself to say the word. You're a god, Anna whispered excitedly. No, said Seth, glaring at Anna. I'm not. But it's the only explanation that makes sense, Ellie said softly. The enemy wasn't the only god to survive the drowning. I'm not a god, said Seth, turning angrily to face them. I'm a boy. I'm me. I think you can be both. No, Seth cried, and a wave surged over the waterfront. Seth, you need to stay calm, said Ellie, watching the water spill between the cobblestones by her boot. Seth sat down again with a sudden drop. I can't be, he mumbled, his chin resting on his chest. Why not? Ellie asked. Because that means my brothers and sisters. He looked out to sea, his eyes glistening. That means they're dead. Seth bowed his head, shaking gently. Ellie took a step towards him, but didn't know what to do. The sea rumbled. Waves washed against the waterfront, and then the sea growled, and a larger wave crashed over the side. Ellie and Anna hopped aside to avoid getting their feet wet. Seth didn't seem to care. He shook, and the sea crashed and raged over ever more wildly. Massive waves rose high above, far out towards the castle, smashing against each other like monsters battling on the horizon. "I don't think it's safe for him to be this angry near the sea," said Anna. Ellie knelt down next to Seth. "I'm so sorry," she said, anxiously watching the waves. She wished she knew what to say to make him better. She clutched his arm. "Seth," she said. His eyes opened, his expression mournful. "Lost." "I don't even remember their faces, Ellie," he said. "I know," she said, thinking of the hundreds of drawings of her brother in her bedroom. "I know. But you remember that you loved them, don't you? It's obvious you love them. Otherwise, you couldn't feel strongly enough to do this." She pointed at the raging, furious sea. She squeezed Seth's shoulder and looked out to the horizon. He watched the waves and took deep breaths, and the sea began to settle. He was silent a while. Ellie and Anna sat either side of him, and together they watched the moon drift slowly across the sky. "What have I been doing all this time?" Seth said. "Have I just been lost at sea?" Ellie shrugged. "The enemy moves from vessel to vessel. Perhaps you do too. Maybe you've been going from one sea creature to the next, looking for your brothers and sisters for centuries." Seth frowned and stared down at the sea. He let out a deep sigh. Ellie glanced into the shadows and noticed Finn sitting cross-legged beneath the statue, grinning his toothy smile. "Did you know about this?" she whispered. Finn giggled. "Of course," he said, rocking back and forth. "How else could he move the sea? My brothers and sisters had all sorts of gifts, controlling the weather, creating music out of thin air, causing dead soil to bloom with life. They were very tedious." "Is that why you want to kill him?" Finn rolled his eyes. "Don't be stupid," he said. "I want to kill him because he's putting you in danger. I thought I'd been very clear about that. Besides, if I kill him, he'll be back again soon enough, bursting out of some other rotten dolphin or walrus or whatever." Ellie turned away in disgust. A drop of rain landed on her face, and then another. She looked up and saw dark clouds swirling around the moon. "We should get home," she said. "A storm's on the way." Then Seth grabbed Ellie and Anna by the shoulders. "What are you doing?" Anna hissed, putting out an arm protectively in front of Ellie. "Someone's coming," Seth whispered through gritted teeth. Then Ellie heard it too. Footsteps from along the seafront. Heavy, clomping footsteps. "Let's go," said Seth. The three of them raced through the forest of statues, hiding behind the flank of a bull. 20 feet away, a man was striding along the water's edge. He wore the long sealskin coat of an inquisitor. Ellie could hear Seth and Anna's quick, wary breathing, like they were ready to run or fight at a moment's notice. They watched him pass by. "At least it's not Hargraff," Anna whispered. Out of the corner of her eye, Ellie noticed one of the statues turn suddenly in their direction, revealing a wide, demonic smile that shone in the moonlight. "Yes," said Hargraff, "that would be most unfortunate." And that's the end of our chapter there. So it sounds like they're going to get caught, doesn't it? I'll have to see what happens in tomorrow's chapter. I'm going to leave it there for today then.